Neil, are you there? You're still muted.
I forgot about that. Just like I forgot about the L in my first name. But anyway, nonetheless, let's have a webinar. Thank you, Veronica. And we're going to cover a lot of information today. Nicole's with me. Ryan might be joining us. We'll see. But we have some nice screenshots and going over kind of those last changes of Nova that we'll be seeing for a while. Now we'll have to get used to all these changes, and Nicole will kind of go over that in depth. But hopefully this will be maybe the last change Nova. I think we're going to do another webinar in November to go over kind of the guidance for a certain report that you have to do. But everything else should be like clockwork. We're kind of locked into a process now that should function pretty good, and Nicole will cover that as well. So let's begin. Feel free to use the chat if you have questions. So today's agenda, we'll give a little bit of a technical update of what happened this week with the programming updates, just reminders on the deadline extensions, reminders on data and accountability funding, which is different than what goes into NOVA. We'll talk about the NOVA updates related to allocation amendments, 1819 member budget and work plans, the FIFO dashboard. Then we'll switch courses and look at the carryover and targets. And then the new requirement by the 1819 budget bill that asks for special reporting on 1718 hours of instruction and operational costs or expenditures by program area. We'll cover how we're going to do that in NOVA. And then we'll briefly cover, as part of each year, we'll be closing out funds. So there's a process for 1617 that we'll be closing out, and we'll go through that process. And then finally, we'll show you where you submit your 3-year plan and upload it via NOVA. So that's a pretty jam-packed agenda. And feel free, like we said, to use the chat if you had questions during the presentation. So technical update. Here are some of the things that were worked on the last, I guess it would be 6 weeks or so, 6 to 8 weeks. So the 1819 budget and work plan were installed, or the process was installed, the FIFO chart, carryover funds for 1718, the closeout for 1617, the 1920 CFAD process, the budget bill requirements, which we'll cover later, and the 1920 annual plan update on your 3-year plan that you'll be uploading. I think Nicole will cover most of this. Some of the stuff isn't due till next year. We'll probably have a webinar at the beginning of next year to kind of go over things like the CFAD and how to submit your 3-year plan and things like that, and maybe just some general updates on the closeout. How does that work? So we're not going away, but we're getting more into a regular groove with the NOVA reporting. And so we'll be transitioning into kind of a process, quarterly process update. Okay, just a reminder on the deadline extensions. So for those of you still working on your 4th quarter expense reporting, it has to be submitted and certified by your consortia at the end of this month. So if you're still working on this, contact your consortia lead. Make sure everybody's in sync as far as certifying by October 30th, because we've also opened up the 1819 member budget and work plans, and those will be due and certified. So submission and certify, which means the member has to submit it, which is somewhat of a certification, and then the consortia also certifies it at that level. So your 1819 member budget and work plans are due at the end of next month, November 30th. And the reason we want to get all that in is because member Q1 expenses for 1819 are due December 1st, and will have to be certified by the consortium on December 30th. So those are important dates. We've kind of put those in the newsletter. We've covered them in several webinars, but we thought it would be important to review that today. Okay, so this is not a NOVA, but it's fiscal related, so there was some people were a little confused on this because we haven't really touched the data and accountability in a long time. So those we just sent out a letter. I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. So we've extended those funds now to June 30th, 2019. If you've already spent those funds, you can do your final report and submission and close out and submit your practice with promise. All those kind of things can be done right now. But if you want to take advantage of the extension, just remember, and these are all in the old MIS WebEx system. So if you're new, this was the old system before Nova. So this is the last fund source that we're using in the old system. So you would require a password, and your certifying official would require a separate password. So if you're new and you don't understand what the data accountability process is, or you're unclear on the MIS WebEx system, I would send an email to TAP, and we'll work together to get those passwords out to you, get the user's guide. Most of the stuff is on the website, but we can show you where it's at. So with the new extension, we'd like any budget revisions that would be from your work plan that you submitted. There's a budget in there. So if you are going to change that or the work plan, any budget revisions would have to be submitted by mid-June. All activities have to cease by the end of June. Then we'll have the final expenditure report due at the end of July, and the closeout August 26th. We didn't want to have the closeout due over the Labor Day weekend, so the closeout will be due the week before. And like I said, all reporting will be using the Chancellor's Office WebEx system. Passwords are needed. To close out, you need to submit a practice with promise, so we can walk you through that. But we're still quite a ways from that. But if you are fully spent, we can help you with the closeout process, and you can get this out of your way and move on. Okay, so I'm going to check. Are there any questions? So Jessica says all activities end by, oh, good catch, Jessica. I'm sorry. All activities end by 6:30:19. So I'll have to change that on the slides, unfortunately. Thank you for catching that, Jessica. So yeah, that is correct. Little typo there. The activities end June 30th, 2019. So thank you. Okay, so moving on to 1819 budgets and work plans. So it's the same process as last year. You click on strategies to develop your work plan that were listed in the annual plan, and then you develop your budget based on the object codes. Each member and consortium is responsible to certify that the members are following the new 1819 indirect limit. So there'll be a checkbox there that says I'm, following the indirect policies, and which are, as you know, it's either for K-12s and county offices, it's the CDE approve rate or 5%, whichever is less. So if your CDE approve rate is 8%, you can only use up to 5%. If your CDE approve rate is 3%, you can only use up to 3%. So whichever is less. Community colleges, it's your negotiated rate or the 5%, whichever is less. So most of you will be down at the 5% level because your negotiated rate is extremely high. So don't confuse this with the administrative cap at the consortia level. That hasn't changed, but we will have a certification budget there as well, and Nicole will cover a little bit of that during her presentation. We do have a drop down if you wish to separate your consortia expenses and your consortia budget from your member budget if you're one of those members that are acting as the consortia lead for your regional consortia. So Ryan liked the new picture of Nova because now we have finished the not, I don't want to say repair job. We've rebuilt this new car, and so now it looks very sparkly, right, Ryan? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Nicole. She's going to walk you through some of the processes that we've put into the new Nova. And take it away, Nicole.
Okay, thanks, Neil. I also just want to mention that the certifications regarding, when your member will certify that they have not exceeded the indirect limits, and that the consortium has certified that they have not exceeded the 5% administrative cap. That will occur during the expenditure reporting piece. I don't have screenshots to show of that, but that is a checkbox that will appear as you submit your expenditure report, and that's just to certify that you've expended funds within those limits. And before I go into the other updates, just wanted to mention that this is kind of our last big update to the system, and hopefully the goal is that we're getting to a self-sustainable state. We're going to get to a more static place, and we no longer have to rely on product ops to develop functionality for us as we move into kind of new fiscal years. There's kind of an order of operations and a workflow that has been built into the system so that as you complete one step, the next step will automatically open up. And so we no longer have to kind of wait for things to be built for us, which will help with us in kind of meeting our deadlines and keeping our deadlines. And so, I'm sure there will be some improvements, moving forward. It'll be more of like polishing things that are already in existence. But in these last 6 weeks, we've really tried to think through what we're going to need for next year and kind of build all those pieces in. So before we get into how to submit your 18-19 member budget and work plan, I want to go over allocation amendments. I have heard from some of you that many of you already need to amend your 18-19 allocations, and in some cases for those that are direct funded in which we had to assign the COLA to your members, you might need to move those funds because we were kind of on a short timeline with that process. So you will notice that we've created a new process for this. We've also created the ability for the members to approve and certify the allocation amendments, so there's no longer a need to upload wet signatures to demonstrate that all the members in your consortia have agreed to and approve of these changes. So in order to complete an allocation amendment, you would navigate to your consortium's main page and scroll down to the allocation section. This screenshot shows that here, and you'll see that kind of each of the years are shown in this display with the ability to amend each year individually. So you would locate the fiscal year that you need to amend and click on the amend button that's located below that fiscal year. And once you click on the amend button, it takes you to this screen, which shows the workflow or the steps that need to be completed. And you'll notice that what we built into the system, every time you complete a deliverable, you'll see kind of a sub-menu populate that's to the right of the blue navigation pane that shows kind of these steps that need to be completed before you can submit. So you'll see this in the allocation amendment process. You'll see the same kind of workflow window when you submit your budget. And you'll see that in the CFAP process and the annual plan process. So that's going to be kind of a regular thing with all deliverables that you submit in NOVA. And so the first step is to confirm and add or remove the certifiers for each agency, and that's under the agencies and certifiers section. And the certifiers are the member representatives for each district. So only member representatives can certify or approve on behalf of their agency or district. And once you have completed this step, you can click Next to move on to the member allocation section, or you can click on the member allocation section. And also, I just want to point out, in this section is where if you need to remove a member, you can remove members and you can add members through this same process. Okay, so once you've verified and confirmed who your agencies and certifiers are, you'll move into the member allocation section. And here's where you can enter the new allocation amount for each member. In order to ensure that everything reconciles, the total remaining field will populate as you make changes to let you know if the changes balance with the consortium allocation. So this is just to make sure that whatever changes you've made do not exceed or are not under, you're not leaving any funds on the table. So in this example, $90,000 was deducted from Allen Hancock Joint CCD's allocation. So as a result, the total remaining lets me know that I still have $90,000 that needs to be allocated to another member. You will not be able to submit your allocation amendment until the total remaining equals 0. We just want to make sure that everything lines up, everything reconciles, and you're not over-allocating or under-allocating your consortia or regional allocation. Okay, so as I've mentioned, this screenshot shows the total remaining balance is $0. And so now this section is considered complete. And once this section is completed, you would click Next to preview and submit the allocation amendment, or you can click directly on the preview section. And this screenshot shows the preview section, which many of you are familiar with. We kind of have this preview section and all of our deliverables. It's a screen that will show everything that you've entered for this particular function or particular deliverable. You can kind of do a last review, and then when you're ready, you would click on the Submit button that's located on the top right side of the screen. And I just want to, as a reminder, only the consortia primary contact can perform allocation amendments and can submit an allocation amendment. And similar to the way the CFAB process and the annual plan process, once the allocation amendment has been submitted, the member representatives for each of the member agencies will receive an email to let them know that the allocation amendment has been submitted and is ready for their review and approval. The member representatives will then navigate to this page. You can navigate to this page through the link in the email, or you can log into NOVA and navigate to the allocation amendment section to the preview page, where you will find the approval card for your district, and you would click on Reject or Approve. And so this process will now take the place of having to upload any wet signatures or any documents to demonstrate that the consortia, that every member in the consortia is aware of these changes, agrees to, and approves of these changes. And this screenshot shows the allocation amendment as being approved by all members and is now considered certified. As you can see on the top right-hand side of the screen, the status has now been changed to certified. So I'm going to quickly check the chat box. I don't see any questions before we move into budget revisions. Okay, great. Okay, so now getting into budget revisions. Well, submitting your member budget. Also, if you do an allocation amendment, the affected member agencies, their budgets will automatically be uncertified so that they can revise their budget and work plan to reflect the changes in their allocations. And it will be the similar process as submitting your member budget and work plan, which is why I didn't show screenshots for the budget revision, because it would just essentially put your budget back in a draft status, and then you would follow these steps that I'm going to show you in these next few slides to go ahead and submit and get your budget certified. So to navigate to your district's 1819 budget and work plan, you would go to your consortium's main page and scroll down the page to find the 1819 budget and work plan section and click on the link for your agency. So this screenshot again shows the workflow for completing the 1819 budget, which includes the work plan section, the budget section, and the preview and submit section. To complete the work plan section, which is what is shown here on this screenshot, you would check on the strategies that apply to your district, And these strategies are taken from the consortium's annual plan that was submitted back in August. So you would click on the specific strategies that your agency will be addressing, and then you would click on the next button on the top right side of the screen to then get to the budget section. So then the next step is to complete your budget. There, you'll notice at the top of the screen is an allocation summary table, and that shows your district's total amount of available funds. And this total includes your agency's 18-19 allocation and the carryover from 17-18. So your carryover from 17-18 is what NOVA calculated as your remaining balance as of the submission of your quarter 4 expenditure report. NOVA took that amount, added it to your 18-19 allocation, which then equals your total available funds. And this is the amount that you'll need to build your budget against. Again, we have a tracker that kind of tracks how you're allocating the funds and if everything is reconciling. So the amount that's listed under remaining amount tracks the budget cards as they are being entered and displays the amount of funds remaining that needs to be allocated. So in order to submit the budget, the remaining amount must equal $0. In this screenshot, this budget still has $10,000 that they need to allocate and put into an object code. So this screenshot shows the budget card that you will use to enter your budget. This process is the same as last year, as you will select the object code under expenditure type and enter a title and a brief description of the planned expenditures. But we have added 2 new items for this year. The first item, I think Neil mentioned this earlier in the presentation, is a checkbox to indicate if these funds are for the consortium administrative expenses. So this is a way that we've built into the system to allow your consortia to delineate the consortia administrative expenses from the member expenses. So you can show what's actually for the member and what's for the consortia. If you have a situation in which only a portion of the funds in that object code will be used for consortium administrative costs, then you would create 2 budget cards for that same object code. One budget card would be for the consortia administrative expenses, in which you would check that box, and the other budget card would be for the funds in that object code that is for your member expenses or for your member budget. And the other new item that we've added in this process is the 18-19 expenditure forecast tool. And this is intended for you to provide a forecast of how you plan to spend your funds by quarter. So for each quarter, you would enter percentages of how you plan to spend these funds. I'm going to use the pointer, so hopefully you can see that here. This is the section that I'm talking to about the 18-19 quarterly expenditure forecast. You'll see quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4, and it asks you to kind of populate the estimate. It's an estimation of how you plan to spend your funds and what percentage of this object code that you plan to spend. This does not take place of the targets. This is to be used more as a planning tool and also to provide your consortia leads with an idea of how you plan to spend your funds. But at the end of the day, what will matter is if you meet your targets. And what will trigger having to complete a corrective action plan is whether you meet your the established targets for that quarter. And here, this is the checkbox for the consortia fiscal administrative expense. So if these funds are for the consortia budget, you would check on this box to indicate that, and that's how these funds will be separated. Again, this process is a work in progress. We've started with this, and so this is what we're going to use for now. But that's not to say that we're not going to further build out the functionality of separating out the consortia budget from the member budget. Things got a little complicated, so we had to kind of find a way that would apply to everyone. So this is the way that we're using for now. But of course, if you have any feedback or comments or ways that we can make this a better process, please do share and let us know. Okay, so once you have completed the work plan and budget sections, you would click next to get to the preview section. So this is shown here, and this is kind of a scroll down to the bottom of the screen, but this would kind of show all of the information that you've submitted for your work plan, everything you've submitted for your budget. You'll review, and then when ready, you would click on the Submit button that's located on the top right side of the screen. Just another reminder that only member representatives can submit the budget and work plan. So you might have member contacts that are actually entering some of this information, but only a user that is designated as a member representative will be able to submit the budget. And once the budget has been submitted, the consortia primary contact needs to certify it by clicking on the Certify button that's located on the top right side of the screen. If changes need to be made to a budget after it has already been submitted, the consortia primary contact will need to click on the Reject button and reject the budget, which will then put it back into draft status for changes to be made. The member representative would make those changes and kind of essentially go through the same submission process that I previously outlined, and then resubmit and certify. And this screenshot now shows the budget that's in certified status, and this means that the 1819 member budget and work plan process has been completed. I'm going to go to the chat box right now and see if there's any questions.
So Nicole, we just have a couple of questions that I can tee up for you. If you go down to Guan Lau, says, when we file the fiscal report, does the consortia fiscal/admin expense combine with the member's expense into one line item? So how will that look visually if you're separating the consortia expenses from the member expenses?
So right now, we've only indicated that in the budget so that you can tell us, okay, of my budget, this is what I'm using for the consortia. It's within the 5%, and this is the amount that's for the member. We don't really have that functionality for reporting just yet. So like I said, this is kind of a start to the process. So right now, we've built in the ability to delineate the funds so that at least you can show what funds are for the consortia and what funds are for the member. We've received feedback that in some cases, some members felt like it appeared as if their budgets were inflated, but in actuality, they were receiving funds for the consortia and also funds as a member. So this would at least show that delineation or show that separation. When it comes to reporting, you would report under that object code under a lump sum. So we don't right now have the ability to report against the consortia budget. It would still build against the same budget. So when you're building your budget and you're checking off the box that it's consortia, it's still part of that same budget. You're just showing what you're using for what piece of that budget is for the consortia, just to show that you haven't exceeded your 5%. We haven't yet built the functionality for reporting, so when you report, it would just you would just report everything in that same object code. But that's not to say that in the future we won't eventually have a process to then report separately for the consortia budget. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think it does. So John has a question. If we transfer funds between members but don't intend to change the member allocation, maybe he means CFAD, I take it that we won't submit an allocation change and we'll report the transfer as a 5,000 level expenditure. I can help you out with that. So anytime you move money between members, you're going to have to do an allocation amendment, John. You can't just, I mean, we have to track that transfer of money. Nicole, anything to add on
No,
that?
I was going to say the same thing, that anytime funds are being moved between members, we need to show that in NOVA, because the members need to be able to report against the funds that they actually have or are using.
Right, because if we didn't, there'd be all kinds of transparency issues, and there could be trust issues. The public wouldn't be aware of. They couldn't track the money between members. So we do not want to get in that situation where you're not doing an allocation change and then just transferring funds through 5,000. All of a sudden, there's no way to trace where those funds went. So we would want you to do an allocation amendment. So Nicole, there's another one from Mariette. He says, should we enter the expenditure forecast manually, or will it be auto-populated?
When you're entering your expenditure forecast in your budget, you're manually entering that. I think last year we had it auto-populate because we deployed that in the system after budgets were already submitted. But for this year, it's an open field for you to enter yourself.
Okay, and then Dana from UKIPA says, the initial budget will be based on allocation and carryover. If we receive one-time funds for the year, I'm assuming like it wouldn't be the COLA. Not sure what one-time funds we would be receiving, maybe through an allocation amendment. Should this also be included, or would this be added as a budget adjustment in the future? And so remember in NOVA, we're only tracking adult ed program funds. So Nicole, the only thing I can think of as a one-time fund situation would be an allocation amendment. What's your thoughts on that? Yeah,
that's correct. That's all I can think of. If you're moving funds between members and you're getting a one-time funds for the year from another member, member A is going to give to member B as a one-time thing. You would do that in the form of an allocation amendment. Once the allocation amendment is submitted and certified, the budgets for member A and member B will revert back to draft status, so you could do a budget revision to reflect the changes, either the deduction of funds or the increase in funds. And I just want to touch base briefly on John's question about the allocation changes. I'm not sure if you're referring to, you have your CFED that's submitted at the beginning of the year, and that kind of is locked down and stays the same. If funds need to be moved around or changed after the CFED has been submitted and certified, then you do that through an allocation amendment. So yes, changes can happen throughout the year, but you would do that through an allocation amendment because the CFAD needs to kind of stay static or stay the same. The CFAD is kind of like the baseline for the following year. So I don't know, Neil, if you have anything you wanted to add about that.
No, I think you covered it. I will take Mariette's follow-up question. What would be an example of a consortia fiscal/admin expense? So when we consider consortia admin, the 5% cap, that is limited to basically any fiscal administrative type activities. So as a consortia, you have a director and maybe you have staff or maybe you don't. But if that person at the consortia level is convening budget planning meetings or talking about 3-year planning and budgeting, so anything related to fiscal type planning, fiscal type budgeting, fiscal type approval, any of those administrative fiscal activities would be categorized as a consortia fiscal or admin expense. Things that wouldn't be counted as a consortia fiscal admin expense would be more programmatic in nature, so like marketing or what else? Maybe running classrooms or anything related to program. So we have that in the fiscal guidance under indirect and under consortia admin. We have two separate sections that go into more detail and give examples, and that's on our website at Cal Adult Ed, and you can take a look at that. And then Tracy asked, is all carryover for 16-17 and 17-18 due on 12/31/18? So, Tracy, only the 16-17 money expires on 12/31/18. The 17-18 money would expire 12/31/19. The 18-19 money would expire 12/31/20. So it's really like it's a 2-year target, 2.5-year lifespan, and that's kind of how it works for now, unless we get legislation that changes it. But that's how we're operating right now. And then maybe this, Nicole, you can help with this. Mariette says, when is the carryover from 17-18 being populated?
So the carryover from 17-18 should appear in your 18-19 budget. Under the line that says total available funds, when you click into your 18-19 budget, that total includes your 18-19 allocation plus any carryover from 17-18 as calculated based on the Q4 expenditure report that was submitted and certified. I just want to mention that I have had a few people who contacted me that have said that, you know, the budgets look inflated or it looks like there's too much in there. And in those cases, it was a case of their Q4 budgets were not submitted or certified. And so the Q4 expenditure reports need to be submitted and certified in order for NOVA to then calculate those amounts as expenditures to then calculate the true amount of available funds for 18-19. So you'll want to make sure that that's squared away first.
Okay, and then John, I can take this one. Can we do an allocation change after the fiscal year has started? Absolutely. You can do as many as you want, John, as long as your members will put up with you for decertifying and then having to certify all those allocation amendments. And then this one probably is for you, Nicole, from Cecilia. Are member representatives or their contacts or listed contacts can submit expenses into NOVA?
So only member representatives can submit the expenditure report. Member contacts can edit and enter information, but only member representatives can submit the report.
Okay, and then maybe you can take Susan's question about the logic in budget changes and certification, if you see that there from Palomar College. It would be helpful to me if we could change the budget and then have primary contact approve the change instead of having to uncertify the plans and then making the change.
Yeah, so right now, unfortunately, that's the way it's built, is that the primary contact needs to uncertify the budget to open it up for the member. I think this is intended to increase the level of communication between the member and the consortia lead so that they're aware that a budget revision is occurring. You know, before they might ask, the lead might ask some questions about why is the budget revision necessary before they uncertify. So it's really intended to kind of increase that communication and that the member is going through the consortia lead in order to do any budget revisions.
Yeah, plus all the other members get to see what the change is and there's transparency, so everybody has to say, yeah, okay, I'm on board with that. And so that was the other part of it, right, for open and transparency?
Yes, I mean, that's kind of the big thing with NOVA. It's all about transparency and accountability and collaboration, just promoting those things.
Okay, and then Cypher says, how would a member go back to change their submitted expenditures for 17-18 Q1 to Q3? And I think, so Nicole, when you answer this one, you know, we are instituting a lockdown after Q4 on our expenses. But what's the process if they haven't filed Q4 and they need to go back and change their prior report during the same fiscal year?
So the process would be that the certifying authority would need to uncertify the expenditure reports for that quarter, and then the member representative for that agency would need to unsubmit their report, revise it, and resubmit, and then the reports would then need to be recertified.
And that would include by everybody in the consortium, right?
Yes. Well, the consortia certifying contact would need to certify the report. So this for expenditure reporting, it's only one certification by the certifying authority for the consortia.
Oh, okay. All right, and then Evelyn from NAPA says, when is the first quarter expense for 18-19 due? That's easy. That's December 1st, 2018. We have to report this on our carryover funds on 17-18. Yes. So your budget that you're creating, as Nicole went through the budget and work plan, that is any 16-17 carryover with the cap, corrective action, any 17-18 carryover, and any 18-19 new funds. All of that will be in your budget, and all of that will be in your work plan, and all of that will be reported Q1 on December 1st. Anything else to add on that, Nicole?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
Thanks, Neil.
And we'll take a few more questions because we do have a few. I mean, we don't have too many more slides, but so Dana says our consortium is not direct funded, meaning you have a fiscal agent, and has funds that are allocated for a pilot or other new programs for a 1 to 2 year time frame. This is what I mean by one-time funds. There are, in addition to our base allocations for members and agreed upon by our executive committee. So if you have a fiscal agent and you're holding money for projects that are going to benefit the consortia, I mean, that's fine as long as all the members agree upon it. You're not doing anything wrong. You just have to make sure you're transparent and all the members know that you're the one holding for this project, or this member is holding the funds for the consortia operational cost, or this one's doing the PD for the consortia. So it's all good, and that's what you do at your meetings when you talk about fiscal and share stuff and agree upon stuff. So I think that's fine. And then so John said, disregard my last question. And I think, so last question here, and then we'll move on from Tracy. If Q1 spending doesn't meet the forecast target 15%, is there any narrative or explanation required? I think, did you cover that, Nicole, or are we going to cover that in a few slides from now?
So I don't have any slides for expenditure reporting in this presentation, but in the expenditure reporting, when you complete your expenditure report, there will be a narrative field that will automatically populate for you to complete an explanation and the action steps that you will take to bring back to meet the targets. And that's in the expenditure reporting section. And we did cover that when we went over the Q4 expenditure reports. That will be something that will be a part of every quarter expenditure. If you don't meet the target, that narrative box will pop up, and it will be required for you to enter an.
So Nicole, that will be triggered by if you didn't meet the 15% of your budget. Is that correct?
Yeah. So once you enter your expenditures and everything has been entered, NOVA will calculate where that lands as far as the percentage spent, which will trigger that corrective action field to populate for you to complete.
Okay, great. All right, Nicole, did you have any more slides? Okay.
No, that's it for now.
All right, speaking of carryover and targets, here we go. I'm going to do a few slides, and then Nicole will walk you through a couple of screenshots. So, and we kind of just covered this, but we'll just reinforce it. So to continue to spend down your 16-17 carryover funds to the end of the year, which is December 31st, 2018, you will need a corrective action plan, which, as Nicole said, is filling out the text box or narrative with an explanation. And this will apply next year for 17-18 funds and the following year for 18-19 funds, and so on and so on. So what we're trying to do is get people to spend their funding down within that 2-year period. If they don't spend it down within their 2-year period, which ends June 30th, then we give them an extra 6 months, but they have to do that corrective action plan. And so if a member keeps doing that corrective action plan, maybe the consortia might have some bylaws in there or some governance that I know some consortia have an 18-month spending plan that's in their bylaws, and then they reallocate. So you got to be careful. If you're not spending in time, you could face some kind of regional consortia bylaw that would result in your funding going back into a pool, but that's really up to the members to decide. For us, we're shooting at 2 years. If you don't meet that target, and it's every quarter up to that 2-year mark, and then we'll give you an extra 6 months with a corrective action plan, and then it reverts back to the state. So I think we kind of went over this. We'll move on to the next slide. Oh, so speaking of, I'm going to bring Nicole back in here to talk about, related to the targets, but also to expenditures, is the FIFO dashboard.
Okay, thanks, Neil. So one of the enhancements that we launched in this latest update is the FIFO dashboard. And the FIFO dashboard, which stands for first in, first out, will show your expenditures in relation to each of the allocation years. And so to access the FIFO dashboard, you would navigate to the fiscal reporting section, which is located on the blue navigation pane on the left-hand side under AEDG, and click on the View Report button, which is located on the top of the screen. So this screenshot shows that page. And once you click on that View Report button, it'll take you to the FIFO dashboard and the chart, which will allow you to select settings from filters located at the top of the screen. And so you would select your year. You can select your reporting level. You can do statewide reports. You can do consortia level reports, and you can do a report for a particular member agency. For the year, you should be sure to select 18-19. Just want to make a quick note that while previous years are available on this drop-down, you can select, I think, 17-18 and 16-17. Because of the timing of when we launched NOVA and the amounts that are in NOVA, those prior years will not show accurate data. So you'll want to make sure that under year, you've selected 18-19. For reporting level, if you want to drill down to the member agency level, you would select member agency. I didn't show it in this screenshot, but in that same drop-down, you can also select statewide, or you can select consortia for the reporting level. But I figured most people will want to see specifically for their own agency kind of where they land. And then once you select member agency, you would the next setting would be to find your district in the drop-down list under the Select Member Agency section. And once you've completed selecting your chart settings, then you'll see a graphic display of your district expenditures, which is shown here. In this next screenshot, if you continue to scroll down, it has the same information that's displayed in a table as shown here. So I know for myself, the graphs don't really help me that much. I really need to see it in a table, and I need to actually see the numbers and how that all adds up. But we have two views available. For some people are really visual, and they really like the graphics, and they understand those better. For me personally, I need to see the numbers in a table. But you'll see here that it shows what your allocations are for the 3 years. It shows what your expenditures are based on the last report that you submitted and kind of the remaining balance. So in this example, this district still has about $68,000 left of 16-17 funds. Don't be alarmed. None of this information is real. This is taken from our test site where we kind of played with the numbers. If you happen to see your agency in any of these screenshots, it's not any real data. And that's it for the FIFO dashboard. It's kind of it's a new feature, so if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please let us know, and please share that feedback with us.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. So if you have survived through the first hour or so of this presentation. This is where it gets a little interesting. So we had a budget bill requirement in the 1819 governor's budget, and we're required to submit this year, and I'll go over the details of that. And this is separate from your quarterly expenditure process and your budgeting and all this. This is kind of an after reporting exercise that we have to do that was put into the governor's budget. So just so there's no confusion, this is a separate process in NOVA that has to do with 17-18 funds that will not affect your quarterly expenditures or your budgeting or your work plan. So the budget bill requires that members report on their 17-18 data the following elements. So we need to report hours of instruction by program area. So we have 7 program areas in the adult ed program. Now for the K-12 county offices, you can easily use your TOPS Pro report that shows hours of instruction. Take a look at that, and you'll have to break that out by program area. And so hopefully that information is somewhat broken out by program area. We'll have to check. We're going to do a webinar, I think, in about 3 weeks, beginning of November. We'll have a letter that goes out with detailed guidance on this. But this was something that we just learned about when the budget bill came out in August. So for the colleges, we're recommending you use when the 320 report comes out in, I think it's November, there's an FTES calculation that is available, and you'll have that information to take your FTES and calculate hours of instruction by program area. Depending on the college, if they've set it up by program area, it could be easy. If you didn't set it up by program area, you might have to come up with a methodology that determines how you're breaking it out by the 7 program areas. So there might be a little degree of difficulty for some of the members in that area. And we're going to show you screenshots of this as well. So the other data element that we have to report for the legislature, it also involves 17-18 data, is operational costs by program area. And so when we mean operational costs, we mean all costs, including, your rent, your building costs, your in-kind, your overhead, your utilities, your custodian, your admin, your teacher salaries and the, classified and all those things. But don't forget about those other operational costs. So what they want us to do by program area is tell us how much it costs to run the program, each program area, and then what are the fund sources that feed into that. And so we know we have Adult Ed Block Grant or Adult Ed Program. We also, some of us have WIOA 2, but then they also want to know about fees. Now, for K-12 and county offices, they can charge fees for career technical education. So they'd want to know that amount. For the colleges, you might be charging fees to students for, I don't know, if there's the student fee handbook allows for parking or books or health or those other fees, we want to capture that as well as contract for services, any grants, as well as those other fund sources, whether you get ITAs from the Job Center or CalWORKs or non-credit apportionment or strong workforce funds or jail ed funds or Perkins, any of those type of funds will be included, and we'll show you the screenshots. But we know it's going to be difficult for some people, but you have to understand when the legislature asks this kind of information, they have it with something in mind. So are they looking at creating an attendance model? Are they looking at return on investment? They are looking at our program. So that could be a good thing because maybe they're justifying an increase in funds. Who knows? But it's critical that we get the most accurate information to them in a timeline before the hearings next year. So that's why we're going to open this up November 1st, and hopefully everybody can get this information in by the end of the year. We'll have a consultant go in and do a report on that, analyze the data. We'll give that to the legislature, and hopefully we can answer any other additional questions they might have and where they're going with this. Let's pause there for a second. And I think I opened up probably a Pandora's box of questions. I'm going to slowly scroll up. Okay, so Jamie says, will this also need to be done for 1819? So this is going to be put into NOVA as a regular data request. And so every year we'll go through this drill until something changes, like we get an attendance model back, or they do something with their funding or tell us it's not needed anymore. So it'll be kind of ongoing from now on. It'll be in NOVA, and next year we'll give you a little more time. We're going to do kind of, and Nicole will go over this, but and we'll do this in the guidance as well. But next year have a lot more time. This year it's a little rushed because of the need to build it, put it in the system, and then get it out to you. So Lorena says, can FIFO report be printed or exported? Nicole can answer that maybe in the chat. And Crystal, student attendance hours, correct. So Crystal, not quite the expert, but if hours of instruction by program area are the equivalent of student attendance hours, then that would be correct. It's whatever is reported into our attendance systems. I would assume that that would be the same thing. We'll definitely clarify that in the guidance that will be going out in the next couple of weeks. And then, oh, Ryan already took care of that. So Will says, what happens if people and facilities are used for multiple programs? So Will, you'll have to do some kind of percentage allocation split, maybe using some methodology. And in the webinar that we're going to have on November 7th, we'll have some methodologies that schools have used. Some use a enrollment percentage, some use another cost allocation methodology. And so we'll provide some of those best practices and models that you might want to think about using. So Marianne asks, when will this report be due? We're hoping to collect all this information by the end of the year. In order to give our consultant enough time to look at the data and comprise a report that would be due to the legislature before the hearings next year. So Wendy asks, can hours of instruction also include distance learning when students are online working on their lessons? So Wendy, if you're reporting in TOPS Pro, or if you're a college reporting in MIS, then we can check that off to see that it's validated. But if you're not reporting the distance learning or these other hours into TOPS Pro, we have no way of validating that those are accurate hours. So if you did report your distance learning into TOPS Pro, then that's something we can look at. But we're going to use TOPS Pro as our a validator for the K-12 and county office for those hours of instruction or attendance hours. Margie says, do we need to account for district admin salaries? So if your superintendent is charging to your program, and that's part of your cost of instruction, operational costs, then you would include that, as well as building rent, whatever you pay to run the program. So we really want to give the legislature the true cost of how much it is to run adult education. And Tracy asked, is operational costs include the matching from the district and other funds to AEBG? Yeah, so if you get LCFF or other matching funds, we'd want to include that as well. And Marianne says, will members be reporting for their respective budgets, or is this one consortia budget? It's by individual member, unfortunately, and then we'll roll that up to a consortia level. And then Evelyn says, what are the 7 programs? So I'll go over them. It's ABE, ASE, ESL, short-term vocational, adults with disabilities, K-12 success, pre-apprenticeship, and workforce reentry. And let's see. In-kind should be included as well, John. So if you get in-kind or contract services or anything like that, I would include those as well. And then John Russell says, do fees collected need to be split up between funds received from cash payments and from AJCC? Also, we have non-AEP that are fiscally self-sufficient. Do you want these fees reported as well? So we're only focusing on the 7 program areas. So if you have non-funded programs in the 7 program areas, we would want to include those funds. So let's say you have CalWORKS money or Job Center ITAs, we'd want to include that as well. If you got a grant for your ESL program, we'd want to include that as well. And any type of fees that you collect for any of those programs. So Wendy says we are reporting the hours in the Topsboro. Good. Way to go. Looking forward to learning more. Okay, and then Cypher says, just to expand on John's previous question, the requirement for allocation amendments between transfer of member fund is a new procedure. I believe previous guidance only requires members to establish MOU, and it would be the member who gave out their funds to report the expenditures. We'll cover that in a little bit, Cypher. We'll have Nicole talk through that. And then Dana says, will that include maintenance costs when the district completes repairs on the site? Yeah, it would include any costs related to you running that program. So custodial, building repairs, computers, wiring, you name it. 7 program types. Answer was non-responsive. Okay, John, I'm going to have to ding you for that one. Maybe the question wasn't clear, but anyway. So, moving right along. Nicole, do you want to give everybody kind of a sneak peek of what those the NOVA will look like? Okay.
Yes. So we thought that we'd show the screenshots. It is, and this section is available in NOVA now. It has been deployed. But we, as Neil mentioned, we will have a webinar on November 7th that will kind of go into these sections in detail. Just wanted to show you where it is, how to navigate to it if you kind of wanted to go into NOVA and check it out for yourself. So in order to access your district program area reporting, and that's what we're calling it, we're calling this program area reporting. It's separate from your expenditure report. It's separate from your budget and work plans. It's kind of a separate report. You would click on the Program Area Reporting section, which is located on the blue navigation pane on the left-hand side, and of course, as always, under the AEDG fund. So you would scroll through the list to find your consortium, or you would use the filters at the top of the screen to auto-populate it. And once you've clicked into your consortium's reporting area, you'd click on your district's name to access your reporting area. So this shows the program area reporting for the Allen Hancock Consortium, and it shows both of their member agencies, Allen Hancock Joint CCD and Lompoc USD, that they each have their own areas to report. So reporting does occur at the member level. So in this screenshot, I've clicked into the Allen Hancock Joint CCD's reporting area, and as you can see, you've got the workflow steps that are outlined. So, you know, in NOVA, for every deliverable, you're going to see kind of workflow steps for everything that you complete. So the workflow for this is the program area hours, then the next section is leverage funds, and then you have kind of your preview and submit section. So this screenshot shows the program area hours, and you would enter the hours of instruction by each of the program areas. Once you've completed that, you would click on Next, or you would click on the Leverage Fund section. This is where you'll enter the amounts for each of the program areas. And once that's completed, you would click on Next. And then here's the preview section. This is where you can kind of do a review of everything that you've entered and then submit. What we've done here with NOVA is we've built out the ability to submit estimates and then to submit actuals at a later date. So I think this year the deadlines or the timing is going to be different than moving forward, only because because of the timing of when we were able to build and deploy this, and also the timing of when we need this information to be analyzed and moving forward. So as Neil mentioned, the timing for the 17-18 year is going to be a little bit different this year. We'd like the report to be submitted and actual submitted by the end of the year. But moving forward, we do kind of have the ability where you would kind of submit two reports in a way. First, you would submit your estimates, and you would do so by clicking on the Save Estimates button, and that will kind of submit it as your estimates. And that's what this screenshot shows, that button. Let me get my pointer here. Can't get the pointer to move. But the Save Estimates button is on the top of the screen on the left-hand side. And then this screenshot right here kind of shows the estimates that have been submitted and saved. When you're ready to submit your actuals, you'll kind of navigate back to the same area. You would complete those steps, and then you would click on the Submit Actuals button, which is located here, as shown here on this screenshot. And this screenshot shows what it looks like when you've submitted your actuals. And once all members have submitted their actuals reports, then that's when the consortia primary contact will need to certify. So when the estimates are submitted or the estimates are saved, there's no need for the consortia lead to certify. The certification only occurs when all of the actual reports have been submitted for all members, and then the consortia primary contact would navigate to the same section and click on the Certify button. And I thought I had a screenshot that showed it certified. Oh, I don't. But this is where you would find the Certify button, and the consortia lead would certify that when ready. So this is kind of a sneak peek. On the November 7th webinar, we will kind of go into more detail and step-by-step of all of this functionality.
Hi, can anyone hear me? This is Veronica.
Hi, Veronica. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
We just had something weird happen, but we are all back on, so we can continue.
Okay.
All right.
I can't hear Neil, but I think he is speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. So did you hear the question from Julie that I asked?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, let me repeat it. So it looks like Julie's in a screen where she said she already submitted the 17-18 actuals. I'm not sure if she means Q4 expenditures or the program area reporting, but the screen on Nova had the header as 18-19. Does that ring a bell to you, Nicole?
So I think if you navigate to the program area reporting section, it automatically takes you to 18-19. So that is one thing I forgot to mention. You'll want to make sure under year, under reporting year, that you change that to 17-18. So hopefully I answered the question.
Okay. And then, so I'll just kind of go over some of the questions that are being asked. Like Tracy asked, where do we input for district funds matching on special report area? I think we do have a section for LCFF, or you can always choose other and use one of the drop-down suggestions. And then Jessica asks, workforce reentry and short-term CTA can sometimes be the same class. You choose based on whether it is specific to reentry. I said it's really your call because we haven't defined the difference. I mean, there's a lot of definitions of what people are using for workforce entry, reentry, and what people are using for short-term vocational, but we haven't really clarified that specifically. We still need to do that, but for now it would be your call on that, so you wouldn't have any wrong answer. And then Erica says, please repeat deadlines again. So the deadlines, we got a lot of deadlines. So the data and accountability special funds are going to be due June 30th, 2019. The 16-17 apportionment funds or AEBG funds or adult ed program funds end at the end of this year, 12/31/18. Okay, and then Lisa says, and I think, Nicole, you might have covered this, 17-18 program report is two parts, estimate and actual. And so what we are trying to do, and this goes back to Jamie's question, this is something we're going to do every year. So starting next year, what we're going to do is at the end of Q4, you will put in your estimates on these sheets by program area. And then by, I think it's the end of the year, we'll give you like another 3 months to confirm that, and then you'll put actuals in. So that'll be part of the new process. We'll go over that in the guidance letter. So that's why you see an estimate and actual. So for this drill that we're doing now, we need actuals by the end of the year. We're kind of shorting you a little bit, and it's kind of a work in progress. But next year we'll give you a little more time. As part of the Q4, you'll put in estimates. CDE will come in and grab those estimates and report that to the Fed. And then actuals will be by the end of the year, and then we'll use the actuals for reporting to the legislature. And so that's how that will work. Okay, now let me get through all this no sound. Sorry about that. So, so Julie answered her question. So Jody, I'm still struggling with where to put ABE expenses. WIO2 includes ABE expenses with ESL, while AEP includes ABE with ASE. Do we guess? I think you use a methodology that's based on some kind of sensible calculation. And so I think what we'll do is continue to dialogue and see what other schools are doing, because there's 200 and something WIO2 grantees. So somebody must have figured this out of how they separate their ASE and their ABE and their ABE and ESL. So more to follow on that, Jody. I don't have an answer, but I'm sure we have a lot of smart people in the state that will have worked that out. Okay, and then Erica says, special reporting deadline for this program by area. Yes. And the special reporting is also due at the end of this year, and that'll be out in the guidance struggle. And Jody,
we'll take care of you just like we're doing the other Jody. So Jody's Unite. So Guillermo says checking 16-17 closes out December 31st. So just to clarify, Guillermo, it closes, activities cease December 31st. We do the closeout, and that's what the next slides are. The closeouts will be part of Q2. So that means the closeouts start March 1st when you do your Q2 report, and then the closeout is certified by the consortia March 31st, and that would be of 2019. Okay, and I'm going to hold on, Stacy, for a second, and we're going to get through these slides and get back to your question. Okay, so NOVA closeout. So keep in mind, AEBG or AEP funds still have a shelf life. They do expire, and they will be closing out every year. So this year, we're in the process of closing out 16-17 funding, or this fiscal year. So like I said before, we have a target of trying to spend all 16-17 funding by June 30th, 2018. So if you look at the life of those funds, they were issued July 1, 2016. So that gives them a 2-year life period to try to fully expend. Now, if you don't spend by June 30th, 2018 in that 2-year period, we'll give you an extra 6 months with the corrective action plan that you can extend the use of those funds through 12/31/18, which gives you the standard 2.5 years. So all activities related to 16-17 funds must cease by the end of this year, which is the end of Q2. So when you file your Q2 report, you will be reporting on how you closed out those 16-17 funds. And I'll go over how we're going to do that in NOVA, because there's a special process for closing out funds. So like I said, Q2 expenses are due March 1st, 2019, and then consortia approval is due March 31st, 2019, and then NOVA will close these funds out in April of 2019, meaning if there's no recapturing of funds, we don't have to invoice anybody, then they get closed out as soon as the consortia certifies. But if you do have any funds, remaining 16-17 funds will be invoiced by the state and paid back by the member to the general fund. The invoice process will take place in April, May of 2019. State accounting offices close their books for AEBG funds in June of 2019. So that's kind of how that process works. 2.5 years to spend and 6 months to kind of close out. And you kind of see how that process works. Starting with 12/31, we cease activities. Then we have the March 1st member closeout report. Then we have the March 31st certification. And then if there are any remaining funds, we have the state processing, invoicing, and recapture in April and May. And then we have June as far as when the state closes its books. And I don't think we have any screenshots on that yet, Nicole, but I think it is that in NOVA currently, correct, if they wanted to look at that?
Yes, if they go to their consortia main page, they will see a section for the upload of the 3-year plan. So it'll just be uploading the template that has been created. You won't be completing anything in NOVA for the 3-year plan.
I mean, so what about the closeout, though? The closeout is also in NOVA as well, right?
Oh, yes, the closeout, and that will occur at the Q2, and so we will show that kind of at a later time. We'll have those screenshots.
Okay. And then finally, 3-year planning submission. That will be uploaded into NOVA later next spring. We'll have draft guidance out this month. We'll be rolling out webinars and workshops in November, as well as the data tool workshops that are going around the state this month. We will be introducing a self-assessment tools that all members can use. We do have training cohorts with human-centered design going on right now. AEP TAP will also make planning consultation available for free. So if you need someone to help you with that, We also be looking at doing a community need or asset mapping webinar. And member resources required will be available through Nova. So I think that might be our last slide. Right, and of course all this stuff is on the website, Cal Adult Ed, and if you need help, you can always contact TAP. They're available. So let's get back to the questions really quick because we have 10 minutes. And I think Stacy had a long question there. I'm trying to find it because it's a lengthy chat here. So Stacy says the AEBG program areas don't match to WIOA programs. Right, that's what the Jodies have highlighted. When you discuss strategies for distributing admin overhead expenses across the 7 program areas, can you suggest methods for reporting ABE, ASE, WIOA 2 costs? We report those to WIOA as ASE separately and ABE, ESL together. So on the webinar, we'll invite some of our consortia that have maybe a best practice or a methodology. We'll have one from the college and one from the K-12 side of the house, and they'll present kind of the methodology that they use, and maybe that can provide some insight. We'll also follow up maybe in our guidance document with other examples as well. So Tracy says, is there a required percentage for the matching to the AEBG program? So there is no matching requirement for our adult ed program or AEBG funding. I wouldn't worry about that. I think, yeah, when you're looking at leverage funding and reporting all those program areas, there's no percentage we're looking at. It's not required. And then Stacy says, in the leverage fund by program section, we are entering expenses only. We're not reporting revenue. So what you would do, yes, we were reporting expenses only, so the cost of operation. And so we're only looking at what it costs to run the program. That's what it says in the budget bill, is looking at the expenditures. So we aren't looking for revenue. So Jody says, and this might be a Nicole question, what triggers 1819 allocation disbursement for direct funded consortia? So there is a requirement in law that says we're supposed to disperse within 45 days of the governor's budget sign. We do have an interagency agreement process, and we've always been a little late on that. And so this year is no different, unfortunately. So if you're a K-12 fiscal agent or a county office fiscal agent or a K-12 or county office direct funded, those fundings are still being processed at the state level. And then that will be administered by CDE and then sent to controllers and then to the county offices. So that will take some time, unfortunately. So sorry about that, Jody, but that's kind of what's been the practice for the last few years. We were trying to fix it, but no matter how the way we look at it, it seems to always get delayed through this interagency process. Okay, so Baker says, we'll definitely attend 11/7. Lots of use of, oh, okay, just a thank you. Thank you, Eric. Where can we access archive webinars to share? I think Veronica can provide information on that. Nicole, did you have any other, I think we're at the end of our questions, amazingly, with the last 5 minutes. Anything else to add?
No, that's it. Just thanks everyone for being on the webinar today. We look forward to speaking with you again on November 7th. Thank you for all your questions and your feedback. It does help us as we, continue to work on the system.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Veronica, for helping out, taking care of all those behind-the-scenes things like you always do. And look forward to November 7th. We'll be preparing a guidance document on that special reporting for 17-18. We'll provide some practices and some examples for you. We'll take a look at the questions and concerns that you had today. And good luck with your Q4 reporting if you haven't finished it. If you're embarking on your 18-19 budget and work plan, we wish you all the luck and success of creating a fabulous work plan and budget. And hopefully you can attend some of the data planning training, or next week we have a webinar on Wednesday. Jay Wright and I will be going over the 18-19 data reporting requirements for K-12 county offices and for colleges. So that'll cover both the MIS system as well as the TOPS Pro system. We look forward, and there's many other webinars next week as well. So we look forward to catching up with you soon, and thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with us. Veronica, any closing comments?
Yes, Neil, thank you very much. I posted a link for our fiscal reporting archive webinars and materials. They can be found on that page. It's the Administrator's 49 page. So today's webinar and PowerPoint will be uploaded there relatively shortly after this webinar. In addition, as Neil and Nicole both mentioned, we do have upcoming webinars, and next Wednesday we will have 2 webinars going on. One is about leveraging AEBG to improve community partnerships, and then also the beginning of the year adult ed webinar with Neil and Jay Wright of CASAS. So thank you all so much. I also put in the support request link, so if you have any questions or you have any requests for technical assistance or professional development, please be sure to reach out to TAP. We are here and very willing and happy to assist you all. And so now I will close out the webinar, and once I do, an evaluation will appear. Please be sure to fill out this evaluation and let Nicole and Neil know what you thought about today's webinar and if there are any additional technical assistance and professional development needs you may have. Thank you all very much and have a great afternoon and weekend. Bye.